Maria held her belly as she mopped the marble floors of Sterling Global headquarters, an architectural marvel where wealth flowed through every corridor except the janitor's closet. She was 5 months pregnant, alone, and earning just enough to pay rent in a crumbling flat and afford prenatal vitamins from the open market. No one greeted her in the hallways. She was the ghost in the building, a shadow in a blue uniform. But she wasn't always invisible. Once, Maria was a first-class law student with a promising future, until an unexpected pregnancy and a betrayal derailed her life. Now, her days began before sunrise and ended with swollen feet and an aching back. But Maria kept going. For the baby, for redemption, for justice. And she had no idea that justice was already circling back. Cameron Bryce, director of operations, was the youngest executive in the company's history. Polished, smug, and obsessed with image. He didn't care how things worked, just how they looked. To him, a pregnant cleaner with worn-out shoes was bad for business optics. "She shouldn't even be here," he whispered to his assistant, Kelsey. "Clients come through these floors." "But she's been here for years," Kelsey replied, voice low. "She's never missed a day." "Then it's time she takes a break," Cameron smirked. "A permanent one." Kelsey swallowed hard. That afternoon, Maria was called into the HR office. She wiped her hands on her uniform, nervous. The room was cold. Cameron didn't look up from his phone. "This is a redundancy process," the HR officer said with hollow sympathy. "Due to structural realignments, your services are no longer needed." "But I'm 5 months pregnant." "It's not personal, just business." Maria blinked. She looked at Cameron. He didn't flinch. He didn't care. But what he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Maria's silence wasn't weakness. It was calculation. Outside the building, Maria stood frozen. Not because she didn't know what to do, but because she did. She had once studied the Labor Act inside and out. She still remembered every clause on maternity protections and wrongful termination. For a moment, the cleaner's mop became a sword in her imagination. She hadn't filed her degree, but that didn't mean she had forgotten the law. She pulled out her phone. There was one professor who never gave up on her, Dr. Igioma. She hit call. "Maria?" the voice answered. "Ma, they fired me. I think it's illegal." "Where are you?" Maria's voice shook. "I'm ready to fight." Dr. Igioma connected her with a legal aid firm that supported vulnerable women. One call led to another, and soon Maria had a team of volunteer lawyers who believed in her case. And in her, they read through her termination letter. One lawyer almost laughed. "This isn't just illegal, it's textbook discrimination. You've got a case worth headlines." Maria looked down at her belly. She had no job, no degree, and no father for her child. But for the first time in years, she had a voice again. Weeks passed. Sterling Global thought they had silenced her. Cameron had moved on, barking orders and flaunting numbers in board meetings. But behind the scenes, Maria's lawyers were building a case so airtight, it would choke the oxygen out of his smug career. They pulled records, reviewed footage, collected testimonies. One from Kelsey herself, who secretly recorded a conversation with Cameron saying, "I'm not keeping some baby mama janitor around for a PR disaster. She can clean her own crib." When the lawyers heard the recording, they didn't just smile. They grinned. The mop girl was about to make headlines. It started with a letter. Not just any letter. A pre-action notice sent directly to Sterling Global's legal department. Kelsey, the assistant, accidentally saw it in the printer tray and nearly dropped her coffee. "Sterling Global is hereby notified of formal complaint of wrongful dismissal under the Nigeria Labor Act and the Discrimination Against Persons Prohibition Act. The complainant is identified as Ms. Maria Obasi." She gasped. She ran to Cameron's office. "Cameron, Maria is suing the company." He chuckled. "That cleaner? Suing us. It's serious. She's got a legal team. They're alleging pregnancy discrimination." Cameron's smile faded. He suddenly remembered the smug words he uttered to Kelsey in the hallway. Were those recorded? His face twitched. "She doesn't have the resources. She's bluffing." But Kelsey had seen the firm's name on the letterhead, Justice Roots Legal Aid, and they never bluffed. Maria sat at a small kitchen table, leafing through her court preparation notes while sipping papaya leaf tea. Her baby kicked gently. "Hold on, little one," she whispered. "Mommy's fighting for both of us." Dr. Igioma had arranged mock sessions for her, how to answer calmly, how to present her truth, how to stand tall even if the room was filled with people in suits. "You know the law," the professor reminded her. "But more importantly, you know what happened. Speak that truth." Every night, Maria wrote letters to her unborn child in a journal. They said we were invisible, but soon they'll remember our name. Cameron held a hush-hush meeting with the company's legal advisor. "She's exploiting the system," he said defensively. "No, she's using the system," the lawyer corrected him. "And she has every right. You fired a pregnant woman, no documentation, no warnings, no alternatives offered. Can we settle quietly? Maybe, but if this goes to the press, your name's on the termination." That hit him hard. Cameron sprang into action, ordering janitorial supervisors to retroactively create reports accusing Maria of lateness and poor hygiene. They forged signatures. They faked timestamps. But they underestimated how carefully Maria had documented her work hours, and how many co-workers actually like her enough to speak up. One afternoon, a sharp-tongued journalist from the People's Mirror called the company's PR office. "We received credible information that a pregnant cleaner was dismissed without cause from Sterling Global. Do you have an official statement?" The PR lead choked on his water. "No comment at this time." The article hit the next day like a wildfire. "Cleaned out. Pregnant janitor fired by mega firm files landmark lawsuit." Maria's face, stoic, strong, was plastered over every news blog. By noon, protesters showed up outside Sterling Global with signs. "Protect working mothers." "Sterling Global, you can't mop this under the rug." Inside his glass office, Cameron stared out the window, furious. "I want her silenced," he muttered. But it was too late. The world was listening. Sterling's board of directors was not amused. Chairman Okwudili Adegbite summoned Cameron. "This cleaner," he growled, "is becoming a PR nightmare. She's lying. She has documentation, medical records, witnesses, and we now have 2 clients threatening to pull out over ethical concerns." Cameron stammered. "We can offer a compensation," he said weakly. "No, you will apologize. Publicly. But that's... Your job is on the line, Bryce." And for the first time, Cameron realized something terrifying. The janitor he fired was now more powerful than him. Maria stood outside the labor court in her only clean maternity dress. Beside her stood her lawyer, a quiet but sharp young woman named Temi. Cameron walked past with his legal team, designer suit perfectly pressed, but beads of sweat dotting his forehead. The media was present. Maria could hear flashes going off. Reporters whispered her name. She wasn't invisible anymore. The judge, a stern woman named Justicine, called the room to order. "This is the matter of Obasi versus Sterling Global Enterprises regarding unlawful termination based on pregnancy. Plaintiff, proceed." Maria stood. She didn't shake. She didn't stumble. She spoke, and the court listened. Temi unveiled emails that showed Maria had informed HR of her pregnancy 2 months before termination. She played Kelsey's audio recording. "I'm not keeping some baby mama janitor around for PR disaster." The room went still. Cameron's face turned white. Then came the forged disciplinary reports, disproven by surveillance timestamps and testimony from other cleaners. Maria's daily logbook was presented, meticulously updated with every clock-in and clock-out time. Temi looked at the judge. "Your Honor, this wasn't just negligence. This was a deliberate and systemic act of discrimination." Justicine raised an eyebrow, and Cameron's lawyer didn't even object. During cross-examination, Cameron tried to feign ignorance. "I don't handle janitorial staff. That's below my pay grade." Temi pounced. "But you personally approved the termination. You signed the letter and told your assistant she was a PR disaster." "I was venting." Under oath, Mr. Bryce. Silence. Then Justice Ian leaned forward. Mr. Bryce, this court finds your statements evasive. Be advised, you're not above the law here. The smirk he always wore vanished. A week later, the court reconvened. Justice Ian's voice was calm but sharp. This court rules in favor of the plaintiff, Ms. Maria Obasi. Sterling Global Enterprises is ordered to pay 25 million Nigerian nairas in damages and issue a public apology. Furthermore, the court recommends the termination of Mr. Cameron Bryce for gross misconduct and discriminatory practices. Gasps filled the room. Maria looked down at her belly and smiled. Justice had arrived. Months later, Maria sat on a podium beside her lawyer, now speaking at a women's rights conference. She held her newborn baby, Amara, in her arms. Pregnant women are not burdens. We are not disposable. We are mothers, workers, fighters. The crowd erupted in applause. In the back of the room, someone recorded her speech and posted it online. It went viral within hours. And at Sterling Global, a new policy manual was printed. The first sentence read, "No employee shall be terminated based on pregnancy or family status. Ever." It was called the Maria Clause. The court ruling didn't just shake Sterling Global. It rattled corporate corridors across Lagos and beyond. Major news channels aired Maria's story. Pregnant cleaner defeats corporate giant, a landmark victory. Labor unions hailed the judgment as a wake-up call. Social media was ablaze with hashtags. Hashtag Maria Obasi. Hashtag Justice for Workers. Hashtag Not Disposable. Other working mothers began coming forward with their stories, some even from Sterling Global's competitors. One quietly reached out to Maria through Instagram. "I never thought anyone would fight back for us." "Thank you," Maria replied, holding Amara close. "You're not alone. We're all rising." Cameron Bryce had always walked like the building belonged to him. Now, his name was stripped from the office door. Sterling Global's board accepted his resignation with immediate effect. What they didn't mention was that they had received over 700 complaint emails since the verdict. Even worse, his reputation followed him. Every job interview ended the same way. "We're impressed with your CV, but your history with Ms. Obasi, it's a liability." No amount of charm could erase what he had become. He tried to file a defamation suit against Maria. It was laughed out of court. He sat in his luxury apartment, now half empty, sipping cheap wine. And in that silence, he realized the irony. He had fired someone he considered small. And now, she was too big to ignore. Back in Maria's neighborhood, people who once looked at her with pity now looked with pride. Even her landlord, who had once threatened eviction, gave her an apology. "My sister, I didn't know you were going to be famous, oh." She smiled. "I didn't either." Maria's daughter Amara became a symbol of hope. People called her the baby that brought justice. But Maria knew it wasn't just about the case. It was about visibility, about no longer being stepped over, ignored, or silenced, about proving that dignity wasn't for the rich. It was for everyone. One late evening, Maria walked back into university she had once left in shame. This time, she held her admission letter in her hand. Maria Obasi, Faculty of Law, final year reinstatement approved. Dr. Igioma met her at the gate, tears brimming. "I knew you'd return." Maria smiled. "This time, I'm not running away. I'm running through." She juggled classes, motherhood, and speaking engagements. The days were hard, but Maria was harder. Every exam was a victory. Every page she read, a promise. Justice Roots Legal Aid invited Maria to speak at their annual gala. When she walked on stage, the crowd rose in a standing ovation, not for her victory, but for her voice. She shared her journey, ending with, "You don't need a title to fight for your rights. You just need truth, courage, and people who believe in you." The organization offered her a paid internship. Within a month, she began working part-time on cases for marginalized women. Seamstresses denied maternity leave, housekeepers fired after reporting abuse, nurses exploited without hazard pay. Her life wasn't just hers anymore. It was a lighthouse, One evening, as Maria left court after observing a case, she saw a familiar face on the street. Cameron, disheveled, bitter, beaten down. They locked eyes. He looked like he might say something, but couldn't find the words. Maria, now radiant with confidence, simply nodded and walked past him. No revenge, no insults, just silence, because some victories speak loudest when nothing needs to be said. Kelsey, the assistant who had recorded Cameron's incriminating words, finally reached out to Maria. They met at a quiet cafe. "I was scared," Kelsey admitted. "I didn't do it to help you at first. I did it to protect myself. But you turned it into a revolution." Maria reached across the table. "You did what was right when it mattered. That's enough." Kelsey now worked in HR at a company that implemented Maria's case study into its staff training. They toasted to choices and to second chances. Life wasn't picture perfect. There were still days Maria cried from exhaustion, still nights when Amara wouldn't sleep, still deadlines she barely met. But she had found her voice. And with every passing day, more women found theirs too. She began receiving letters. "Because of you, I confronted my boss. You helped me believe I mattered. Your story saved me." Maria didn't reply to every message, but she read every one. They were her fuel. 3 years later, the auditorium erupted in celebration as Maria walked across the stage. Maria Chinello Obasi, Bachelor of Laws with distinction. The applause was thunderous. Her daughter, now 3 years old, clapped from the front row, proudly wearing a tiny gown. Maria bent down and whispered, "We did it." "I know, Mommy." Amara beamed. When the photos were posted online, a single caption went viral. "From cleaner to counselor, the Justice Janitor." A year later, the National Assembly passed an amendment to the Labor Act strengthening protections for pregnant women in the workplace. It was unofficially dubbed Maria's Law. Her case became required reading in law schools. Her story turned into a documentary. And in a quiet office on a busy Lego street, a new plaque was hung. Obasi and Company, legal advocacy for the undervalued. Maria sat at her desk, now a full-fledged legal practitioner. A client, a young mother, entered with tears in her eyes. "I'm scared. They said I'm too pregnant to work." Maria stood. Let's make them regret those words. Months into her legal career, Maria took on a case that felt hauntingly familiar. A woman named Rukiat, 6 months pregnant, was fired from a textile factory after requesting lighter duties. The factory had no HR department, just a manager who barked orders and ignored pleas. Rukiat sat across from Maria, shaking. "They said I was replaceable." Maria's fingers tightened on the case file. "I've heard that before." Maria didn't just represent Rukiat. She mentored her. They prepared documents, reviewed timelines, and even rehearsed how to speak confidently in court. Rukiat's voice cracked at the start. By the end, she roared. Word spread. Women from all walks of life, market traders, nurses, even low-ranking bank tellers, began reaching out to Obasi and Company. Maria started hosting free legal clinics in underserved neighborhoods. Her small law office grew into a network. Former cleaners, clerks, secretaries, many trained under her scholarship program, the Obasi Initiative. Some joined her firm. Others started their own. And across Lagos, small fires of justice began burning in places that were once cold and silent. Maria was invited to sit on a national legal reform committee. At her first meeting, a senior official scoffed. "You were a janitor? What qualifies you for this seat?" She didn't blink. "I cleaned up messes then. I'm still cleaning them now. Only difference is, now I get to hold the broom and the gavel." The room went quiet. That quote hit headlines the next morning. From janitor to justice, Maria Obasi cleans the system with her voice. It became a slogan. It became a movement. Late one night, Maria received an anonymous envelope. Inside was a letter. "I was the one who ordered the forged disciplinary records. I did it because Cameron threatened to fire me too. I've carried this guilt for years. Please forgive me." There was no name, just pain. Maria held the paper and cried, not out of anger, but out of relief, because the truth always found a way, sometimes slowly, but always. Maria was invited to deliver the keynote at a major international women's law symposium. Delegates from 25 countries, a hall filled with power. And yet, she began her speech with a story. There was a time I wasn't given a seat at the table. I was told I wasn't educated enough, not classy enough, not important enough. So I brought my own chair, sat in the corner, and waited. Now the whole table listens. Thunderous applause. When she walked off stage, a young legal intern stopped her. I don't want to just become like you. I want to go further. Maria smiled. Good. That's how legacies grow. On a quiet Sunday, Maria visited the old Sterling Global building, now under new management. It had changed its name, but the floors were still polished. She stood silently by the janitor's closet. It was locked, but she remembered the mop, the rubber gloves, the loneliness. She whispered to her past self, "Thank you for not giving up." As she walked away, a young cleaner passed her. "Good evening, Ma." Maria turned. "You doing okay?" The cleaner nodded. "Yes, Ma. They treat us well now, ever since the Maria woman came." Maria smiled. "I've heard of her." Years later, Maria was nominated as a high court judge. Her appointment was contested by a coalition of conservative elites who claimed she lacked traditional pedigree. But public support overwhelmed opposition. Petitions were signed. News networks rallied. At her swearing-in, a camera zoomed in on her face. Strong, calm, steady. The headline read, "Former janitor appointed high court judge. Justice wears a new robe." The same people who once ignored her now stood when she entered a room. But Maria never forgot where she came from. She carried the mop handle in her heart like a sword and wielded it with wisdom. One day, Maria's daughter Mara, now 13, came home upset. "My teacher said I should pick a more realistic hero than you." Maria knelt beside her. "Realistic? Baby, I started with a broom." She pointed to a framed quote on the wall. They laughed at the cleaner until she cleaned up the system. Amara smiled. "I want to fight for people too." Maria looked at her daughter, her legacy, and replied, "Then start where you are, even if that place is the bottom." Collision the moral. Never underestimate the quiet ones. They may be mopping floors today, but they're building a revolution beneath your feet.